my girl, Miss Vacuum Cleaner.
Now we're into life alerts.
Life alerts. What in the world?
I don't know.
What
the
are
kid
we doing?
is. I don't know.
What are we doing with life alerts?
I don't know. She's like, oh, I need to get everybody one so that when they fall, they can call me.
And doggone Savannah.
She's
2 still?
Three.
3 now.
She'll be 4 in September.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Smart as a whip. Is she going to school at all or no?
I need to find, now that like the pressure of like the bar is over, now I'm going to try and find somewhere for her to go. That's on my list of things to do today. I took the rest of the day off so that I can kind of like, because you know I want to move too. I'm trying to move to like the DC area when my lease is up in 90 days. So
gotcha. Well, boy, well, I'm glad I caught you when I did then.
Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about. Let's talk about. Yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Well, I am excited and delighted to be here with Shaundala Bryant of Wassissa. Jefferson County.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, but also FSU alum and went to law school where? Syracuse. Okay. And now a recent graduate of the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. Yes, love it.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me about this path that you've chosen in terms of your one undergrad studies and then going on to law school and then going to FAMU to get your master's.
So I think I was one of those weird kids, right? Like when people were like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I immediately said a corporate lawyer. I had no idea what a corporate lawyer did at the time. But then, you know, kind of watching my dad build out the barbershop and manage the barbershop in Monticello when I was growing up, I kind of understood that, like, I had, like, a knack for business, and I understood it, and it was something that I wanted to do, right? I was like, I don't think I want to cut hair. I think I want to wear a suit.
Okay.
But just watching him and the passion that he had for it, I think kind of like reaffirmed that business was definitely something that I wanted to do.
Okay.
And then I always kind of had an interest in like Asian culture. So I was like, how do I put these two together? So at that time, dating myself a little bit, Florida State still had the multinational business operations major.
Gotcha.
So we did a semester abroad. We had to take like cross-cultural studies as well as the business component. And so that kind of, you know, solidified that. And I knew I wanted to go to law school still, but while I was in undergrad, literally every semester somebody died. And so my GPA had, you know, peaks and valleys because I think at that time I didn't know how to say I was depressed or going, like trying to manage that grief. And so I didn't know what it was, but it was reflected in my GPA.
Gotcha.
So that was probably like the first time I was like, you know what, maybe I need to work a little bit, see, you know, kind of talking myself out of my own dreams, right? So ultimately I snapped out of it, applied to law school. I applied to 13 schools and got into 9. So I was like, okay, all right, maybe this is, you know, this is it. And I decided on Syracuse because it was the furthest away from home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that was a really good experience. Like I don't, I guess, downplay my experience at Florida State, right? Because I had a great time. I met some of the friends that I still have had, you know, my entire life. But I think there was something transformative about leaving home at that time. Because it was always like, oh, you know, if you stay home, you can work this place, or we know these people, you can work there. But being able to leave at that time and create a network of my own and kind of identify what my passions were outside of everybody, I think was definitely transformative for me. But I sat for the bar and I didn't pass the first time. I've never not passed, other than my driving test. I've never.
Wait a minute, your driving test.
Driving test, but that's another story for another day. That's the only thing I've never passed the first time, and so it was humbling, but it was also still a bit of a grief process. So I took some time off, and then decided, like, I know about myself that I am addicted to achievement. I know that.
Okay.
And so I knew that in order to kind of bring myself back into a place where I could focus on the bar and focus on everything, that I needed to achieve something. I needed to go back to school for something. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting an MBA and I don't want to apply anywhere else but FAMU.
Nice.
And I know it's cliche. I know everybody says FAMU changed my life, but it really did.
Really?
It really did. Again, going to FSU, then going to Syracuse, like, I've always been in the PWI world. And there are affinity groups, like, you know, you can join the Black Student Union or you can join BOLSA, which was a great experience, but there is nothing like being nurtured by your own people. The way that, like, Dr. Friday Stroud, Dr. Wakama, the way that they poured into me just solidified, like, the things that were already there that I was kind of, like, questioning about, right? And it was their urging that forced me, I ain't gonna say forced me, but encouraged me to apply for the Hennessy Fellowship, which is kind of how Banking on the Culture came about. So the Hennessy Fellowship is a partnership between the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and Moet Hennessy. They recognize that, you know, in terms of C-suite level professionals, there's not, like, the diversity, it doesn't match, right? The words and the actions don't match. There are very, very few executive level Black people, for lack of a, you know,
That's
for,
fine.
you know, for trying to, lack of a better way to put it. But so Hennessy invested $10 million into the Thurgood Marshall College Fund to create the Hennessy Fellowship. So essentially they pick 10 high-performing HBCU grad students, and they take us through this immersive, like, boot camp and professional development opportunities to help prepare us for C-suite careers.
Okay.
And that experience, again, life-changing. I didn't think, they only picked 10 people. I was like, they're not going to pick me. Like, you know, there's so many other people, and there's so many, you know, qualified candidates just at FAMU. Like, yeah, I'll apply, but no intention, like, no desire or belief that they would call me back. And here I stand, you know, as a member of Cohort 3. As a function of the program, we were asked to create a capstone project, which is kind of how Banking on the Culture came about.
Okay.
So for me, I knew that, like, I've always had a passion for finance and wealth management. And I think that that is one of kind of the untapped resources in the Black community, right? We don't talk about finances. We keep our financial information close to chest.
We do.
You know, regardless of whether we have it or not, we don't want anybody to know. We don't build relationships with bankers. We don't, you know, make our checking and savings accounts work for us. We kind of just put our money there because that's where we know we're supposed to keep it, right? But there's so many other products that are, you know, on the market, or just bank products that will help you accumulate wealth. And then the other part of it was just the revitalization of Black-owned banks. At one point in the 70s, there were almost 300 Black-owned banks and minority depository institutions, and today they're now 18 because of, you know, a new investment to create a new bank. So there were 17 up until a couple months ago. So,
did you do research on that?
I did.
Okay.
I did. And so just I guess the biggest resource for the information on banking would be the National Black Bank Foundation's website. And they are doing amazing work at sustaining the banks that exist. So really, really cool to have kind of met them and been mentored by them in some regard, and, you know, building out Banking on the Culture. So essentially that's what we do, right? Like, we find HBCU students who have an interest in finance and wealth management, who also have a financial need, right? Like, they are interested, but they don't really have access to the capital. So partnering those students, giving them micro grants to then invest in Black-owned banks as a, you know, way to keep it full circle.
I love that. I love that. Now, you talked about, from a little girl, watching your father with the barbershop business. Did you own a business as a youngster?
You know, I think everybody sold candy out of their book bag.
Okay. Was that you? You was a candy girl?
Definitely selling some candy. The candy that I didn't eat, because that was a whole other story for another
right.
day. I was eating the chocolate bars. I was gonna eat those. But that was kind of it, right? Like watching my dad, like, you know, and then my dad always had these crazy ideas of how to improve, like, the way to sanitize the clippers. Like, let's make it more efficient, you know, or, oh, you know, this one only has, like, I think, like, 98%, like, alcohol or whatever. Like, if I increase the alcohol, like, will it irritate the skin but sanitize better? So just, like, just that inquisitive nature, like, it was always, like, fascinating to me. So I think even as a kid, I may not have, other than selling candy, right? I don't think I had like a business of my own, but like consulting in some way, like telling other people how to like make their ideas better or grow them. I think that was more my niche than.
Gotcha.
Because all I did was I took the candy out of the vending machine.
Okay.
Sold it at school. It's
all
probably
right.
not appropriate.
It's all good. It's all your lived experience.
You live and you learn.
You do. You do. So now you mentioned that while you were at FSU that there was a lot of death that took place. And you know, it was difficult for you, you know, navigating through that grief. And so what role has your mental health and well-being played in your life's work?
I think, so I guess to kind of tap into that, I was a daddy's girl my entire life. My dad died the day after my 19th birthday, like freshman year. Then my grandmother died. Then my best friend died. So it was just like a constant cycle, to the point that, as crazy as it may sound, I thought that in some way me desiring to further my education was like cursing my family, right? And so even saying it out loud now, I know that I'm in a better place with it, because at that time nobody was talking about like resources that were there to kind of help navigate grief and depression, or even what those things look like.
So no counseling or therapy or
Right,
anything like that.
right. And again, in the Black community, those things are so taboo. We don't talk about it, we pray about it, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I am where I am today based on the value of prayer, but I also think the Bible talks about wisdom, right? And being able to decipher what resources are available to help you navigate life.
Right.
And being able to be accountable to myself and learn to give myself some grace, I think, are the two major tenets that I think have guided me to this point. Understanding who I am and the things that make me tick, like being addicted to achievement, and sometimes understanding that it's okay to not necessarily wrap my value or how I see myself and what I'm accomplishing at the time. Like, I'm just as worthy today as I am tomorrow, you know? So being able to sit back and have those conversations with myself, I think allowed me to get to this point, because there was a point where none of it made sense. Does that make sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense. As a Black woman, do you feel like that's even more challenging to, you know, see the value in yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's even harder because I feel like I have to always see the value in myself, because I have a little girl. So, you know, even in those moments where I'm like, oh, today is not a great day, like I just want to kind of hide under the covers, you know, I have to shake it off, because I don't want her to develop those habits, right?
Yes.
And I think that's another thing for me personally that has kept me accountable, because I know that she's a sponge, and whatever she sees me do, she's gonna do it too.
Oh, yeah, she is.
And it has helped me, like, being a mom. I think has definitely been another blessing in my life, because she keeps me accountable. Like, I can't, you know, growing up, so another kind of anecdotal story, growing up, I was a heavy child. Like, I was, but that was my bonding time with my dad.
Oh,
He would get
candy.
home, all the candy, and my dad would get home late from the barbershop and be like, hey, let's have an ice cream sundae and talk about our days, right?
Oh, wow.
So 3 o'clock in the morning, I had no business eating ice cream.
Right.
But I did it because that was my bonding time with my dad. So, you know, I developed this habit of saying mean things to myself in the morning, so that when people said mean things to me at school, you can't hurt me because I've already hurt myself much, right? And recognizing that as an adult, some of those habits still exist, and being able to check myself and say, hey, you can't say that to yourself because you wouldn't want anybody else to say that to yourself. And you can't say it to you because you don't want her to say it to herself. So just having that level of accountability, you know, I think is very valuable, but also recognizing that even if she didn't exist, those are things that I should have been working on anyway. Does that make sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense. Wow. And so like that whole deprogramming and reprogramming, you know, and loving on yourself and doing away with the negative self-talk. That is so important.
It is.
Yeah. So talk to me more about banking on you, on yourself, the nonprofit, and kind of where you are now with, I guess, you know, the work that you're doing with the cohort or what have you. Tell me kind of where you are and what the future holds.
So I'm super excited. We are in the process of partnering with one of the Black-owned banks to expand the program. So the original cohort is going to be here at FAMU. We've already identified the students.
Nice.
And so from there, the next step is to expand into Atlanta, so the 3 Atlanta schools. So that part is really exciting. But it's exciting and it's like affirming, right? Because I never saw myself occupying the nonprofit space. Like this was kind of something that it was just like, oh, like people who are into nonprofits have like this philanthropic heart, and I don't know if I really have that, right? But once you find the thing that you're passionate about, you realize that you may be all of those things that you didn't think you were. And I think that's where I am with it. I would love, you know, to be having this conversation 2-3 years from now, and banking on the culture is like the program, the go-to program that HBCUs look for, you know, when they're talking about financial literacy or wealth management for their students. Like I want them to call us and be like, hey, can you guys start a cohort here? Can you guys work with us in some way? Like that would be amazing. And so the plan is to touch all the HBCUs and then circle back and, you know, touch the affinity groups at PWI. So like a Black Student Union or, you know, a BOLSA back at Syracuse, which I found out today they're creating a pathway program between the Atlanta schools and Syracuse Law to kind of increase diversity there. So that was exciting to see. So just banking on the culture a household name when it comes to young Black people who are passionate about knowing how to manage their finances and creating generational wealth.
We need to do it.
Let's do it.
Listen,
we're going to do
banking
it.
On the culture. We're gonna make it a household name.
We're gonna.
You
make
heard it right here on Conversations with Nicole.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Nice. So what's next for Shaundala?
You know, I am open to this new place in my life. Like I am embracing change. I'm embracing newness. I'm living in a space of gratitude because I know that like God has something great on the horizon for me. So I'm just here ready to receive.
Okay. All right. And so are you still seeking the corporate attorney path?
I am. Definitely. So I just sat for the DC bar exam. So we're going to send all the positive vibes that way.
We are.
And that's definitely where I want to be, like in-house counsel, you know, somewhere in the finance industry, but I'm also really interested in like policy and regulatory work, especially now building out the nonprofit and kind of identifying where there's still, even though there's millions of nonprofit organizations all with like great missions, but there's still so many areas that need help, right? Like there's still so many places that I feel like I could be of service, and I want to save the world, as crazy as it sounds, right? And I probably need to slow it down a little bit, but I'm ambitious by nature. So just being able to be of service and to bless other people, that's really all I want to do.
I love it. I love it. Now, what's some of the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is probably the most simple advice. And I don't know, but when I lost my dad, Carmen is one of my favorite people in the whole world. I was a flower girl in their wedding. Like I love
Carmen.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when I lost my dad, I was like really going through like just beating myself up a little bit, right, about not being stronger. And one of the things she said to me was, Jesus wept. And I feel like in that situation, like, you know, it made sense. But all through life, like Jesus wept, Jesus cried, Jesus had good days, he lost his friends,
right?
You know, and he gave his life to save the world. And why do you feel like you have to have all the answers? Why do you have to be strong? If Jesus can cry, you'll be all right. You can cry too.
Was that kind of giving you permission to cry?
It did. It gave me, like, I feel like in the moment it was permission to feel what I was feeling, but also like permission to tell myself I'm a human.
You are.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Superwoman.
All the time.
Right?
Yeah.
With all these capes on.
Exactly. It's okay to just be.
It is.
And that's what it meant to me. And I think that has carried me so far. Like I said, the most simple 2 words, but it changed how I be.
Nice. Now, from Wasissa.
Yes.
And what do you carry with you from Wasissa as
Everything. Everything. I am Wasissa through and through.
Okay.
Yeah. Like people like, oh, you're from Monticello. No, I'm from Wasissa. Yeah.
Okay.
It's different.
Don't get it twisted. It's only about 30 of us, but we ride strong. Okay. I'm from Wasissa. Yeah. It made me who I am. Like the pride. Like we're a small, close-knit family. Like everybody is somebody's auntie if they're your cousin or not. Like we're just really, really close, and we value each other. We value relationships. We value people. We value our reputations. We value, being something, right? Like it's so hard to explain. Like you ride through there and it's just trees and some cows, it is.
And some trailers, but we are good people. And if I learned nothing else, I learned how to be a good person and to be a person that people can count on, and to be a person of substance. And wherever I go, I'm gonna tell people I'm from Wasissa, because that's what it is.
Love it.
Yes,
Love it. All right. As we close out, my final question is, what is your greater work?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think my greater work, I haven't really tapped into it just yet, but I know that just being a servant of my people, just forging the culture forward. I think that's what I was put here to do.
Love it. I appreciate it. All the best with Banking on the Culture. I look forward to it being hosts across the country and on every HBCU campus, and just hearing about all the great and wonderful things that you have coming up in the future.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you all for joining us on Conversations with Nicole, where we are connecting the community through conversations. We'll see you next time.